Anyone want a hug? Hugs? No? No hugs.
It feels like it's just done for shock value at the start.
Well, that's not a good thing. What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again. So, recently I watched a video by Extra Credits talking about the storytelling of video games. And in it, they took a predictable but well-deserved shot at the writing of Destiny.
There are three distinct pillars that make up what we offhandedly call game writing: plot, character, and lore. Not all games need to focus on all of these equally. In fact, some of the best written games come from teams realizing which of these their game should focus on, while some of the most expensive failures in game writing come from teams that never stop to separate these out and just try to deliver on all three.
At which I was like, bitch please, that's my job, and started writing this video. Which turns out to be a fucking monstrous pile of text, but you'll see what I mean by the end of the video. Joking aside, Extra Credit lays out the three main pillars of storytelling fairly comprehensively. But it got me thinking, why does Destiny's storytelling suck? And I mean, like, really suck. And it's not just the in-game storytelling, it's the comics as well. They're horrible. How did this happen? It's a universe ripe for really great stories, and yet this is the shit that we get? How? Why? For example, in the most recent Warmind comics, issue 2 and 3, they are some of the worst storytelling in the Destiny series. I haven't covered them yet, and I will, but basically, issue 2 does nothing but try to kill Anna Bray multiple times, which we know doesn't happen because she's the vendor in Warmind, only to kill her lover Cameron and then kill her lover Cameron again? Well, I mean, it kills the recordings that Anna had of her, but... And then, in issue 3, it's a flashback within flashbacks within flashbacks, so there's no sense of time and continuity, and it's jumping around from place to place to place, and we find out Anna is a fucking deserter, which, you know, fuck her, and then her lover comes back to life via Deus Ex Rasputin, and we have no idea where this takes place in correlation to Warmind or the start of Destiny 2 or Anna finding the Rasputin facility. It's just all over the place. It's schizophrenic. Simply put, it's a mess. And yes, if I was willing to be entirely honest with myself, even the part of Destiny's storytelling that I like, the lore, the grimoire, it's all over the place, and it doesn't really explain things in the universe that the average person living in the universe would know. For example, did you know that Destiny takes place 700 years from now? And where do you think I learned that? Was it in the lore? Was it in the grimoire? Was it on a gun? Did I get it out of a scannable? Nope. I learned that from the marketing materials released prior to Destiny 1. And it still seems to be the case, as it fits within the timeline provided by Failsafe and the crashing of the Exodus Black on Nessus 500 years prior to the start of Destiny 2. So let me make sure I got this right. Destiny only takes place 700 years from now, and the collapse happened about 500 years prior to the start of Destiny 1. It's not like the city is this low-rent shantytown. We have the ability to transmute matter. We have FTL drive ships, and people have these like they have cars. I have weapons that can track people. I have weapons that have smart scopes. We have a city the size of several small countries. We have a currency that can literally be transmuted into just about anything. So we have economics, we have a government, we have these huge ass walls which are a feat of engineering here to unrival. You know, because it borders several countries. But no one knows what fucking year it is. None of the hundreds, if not thousands of robots walking around or the millions of pieces of recovered technology had a chronometer of some sort. None of them? Not one of them? Hell, they don't even bother to try to make up a fake measurement of time like it's 504 AC after collapse. Come on, like, something? Anything? No? Okay. And it's not like I get the feeling within the universe that people wouldn't know this sort of thing, kind of like how everybody in Fallout knows when the bombs were dropped. It's just that the Bungie writers have never bothered to put this to print, which makes absolutely no sense, more so when you consider that there is actually lore in the game for the year of 2013-2014, just before the Ares 1 set off to Mars. And yet, we don't know what caused the collapse. And it's not like the people in the world don't know what caused the collapse.
There was a time when we were much more powerful. But that was long ago. Until it wakes and finds its voice, I am the one who speaks for the Traveler.
I speak for the Traveler. I never said it spoke to me.
You must have no end of questions, Guardian. In its dying breath, the Traveler created the Ghosts to seek out those who can wield its light as a weapon. Guardians to protect us and do what the Traveler itself no longer can.
What happened to it?
I could tell you of the great battle centuries ago. How the Traveler was crippled. I could tell you of the power of the darkness, its ancient enemy. There are many tales told throughout the city to frighten children. Lately, those tales have stopped. Now, the children are frightened anyway.
And Cayde 6 writes about it in his journal. There's no bounty, no hive. I'm out in plain sight. The sky is torn open, and there's nothing and nobody left in this ruined world but me and the boiling shadows around. Whatever it is hits me before I can level my gun. Doesn't matter. Tendrils of pain coil around my splayed fingers, my outstretched arms, my shoulders, my neck, my screaming mouth as it consumes. I'm being enveloped. Everything is wrong. Primordial. My systems go sideways. All but my sensors. It wants me to witness this. The world. Its world now. Suffocating in the black poison. I collapse. We all collapse. And I mean, it's not like we don't have computers from around that time period, or Rasputin, or if Cayde 6 lived it, how many other Exos lived it as well? And of course, people clearly survived it. And we as Guardians, well, some of us would have been rezzed right after it. And not one damn warlock said, I wonder what happened here. Of course they did. And let's go ahead and use a real-world example. If I can tell you that on February 11th, 1504, Queen Elizabeth died due to complications from childbirth, and that the child she delivered on February 2nd died a few days after birth, or that on the 17th of March, 180 AD, the 16th Emperor of Rome, Marcus Aurelius Antonius, died, and he was 58 years old and had ruled for exactly 19 years and 10 days, then I'm just saying that something somewhere could tell us what happened during the collapse. Even in the post-collapse landscape. You know, it's not like there's not sentient fucking computers running around. I'm just saying. The fact that the collapse is treated as this big unknown that nobody knows exactly what happened, at least not in the lore, and we're gonna leave it a mystery, is actually kind of stupid when you think about it. There has to be some history of the darkness that caused the collapse, and of course, there seems to be, it's just something we're not privy to because reasons. Destiny's lore and story and world building often remind me of something sci-fi and fantasy writer George R.R. Martin once said when talking about Tolkien and the depths of Tolkien's world for Lord of the Rings.
But Tolkien really invented modern epic fantasy in its current form. And one of the things he did that was extraordinary was create Middle-earth in such detail. If you look at some of the pre-Tolkien fantasy, it's written more in the story of fairy tales, you know. Once upon a time, there was a king, and the king had a beautiful daughter, and there was an evil vizier. And they may have names, but you won't know like who was the king's father or who was his grandfather or how the dynasty came to power or how long it's ruled or what the neighboring countries are. It's all told in this fairy tale thing. Tolkien gave us all these histories, all these appendices and genealogies, and everything was rooted, and it seemed as real as England or France or Germany when you read these things. And since then, that's become the style for epic fantasy. It's something that fantasy readers now expect. They expect a fully realized secondary world, as Tolkien called it. If you look at it like an iceberg, they say the 3/4 of an iceberg is hidden below the surface. That was certainly true with Tolkien. With a lot of the fantasists who have followed Tolkien, though, it's a magician's trick. We have some ice on a raft, and we want you to think that there's this huge edifice underneath, just like with Tolkien, but there really isn't in some cases. And that was probably true with me in the beginning. I mean, I began with the story and the characters and the scene.
And of course, it's not just the lore and the world building. Destiny absolutely fails when it comes to characters and characterization. And Destiny is about average when it comes to plot. Mind you, plot isn't the story. Plot is the reason that the story is happening. A plot is Hero X needs to go kill big bad guy Y to save the world. How you get from plot point to plot point is the story, and the storytelling in Destiny is quite often nothing more than plot point to plot point with nothing really in between, other than some mission contextualization told to you over a radio. Now, I've gone on and on about how absolutely narrow our image of the Destiny universe really is, and we'll come back to that by the end of the video, but what I want to talk about is fixing Destiny's narrative. I could talk more about what's wrong about the narrative, and we will kind of do that in trying to fix it, but anybody who's played Destiny for 5 seconds kind of understands what's wrong with Destiny's storytelling. So, how do we go about fixing it? And that seems like a good place as any to stop for now. In our next episode, which is already recorded and just requires some editing, we will be ripping apart the characters and the world as a character and trying to rebuild them. So, that should be fun. Stay tuned for that in the next day or so. And like always, stay frosty. What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again. And today, people, we're going to be talking about the characters of Destiny. Well, I mean, we would be if Destiny had any characters. For you see, Destiny doesn't have characters. It has caricatures. Hawthorne is the strong, independent outsider who just wants to belong. Ikora is the super competent battle mage. Zavala is the stoic protector. Tess is the greedy merchant. The Cryptarch is the used car salesman. Banshee 44 is the rough and tumble vet who's losing his mind but still remembers how to do his job better than anyone else. Shax is the overly enthusiastic sports ball dude who loves swords. The Emissary is the overly enthusiastic sports ball girl who may or may not be the Queen of the Awoken. Cade is the charming rogue who hides his internal pain with jokes. Amanda is the tomboy country girl. Arak Jalal is the emo kid nihilist. Lakshmi is the cult leader. Executor Hideo is God's precious child. Zur is hentai. Asher Mir is the annoying nerd, and Sloane is the dutiful soldier. Anna Bray is one of the most badass and storied hunters to ever exist, who's also the reincarnation of an insanely smart scientist who just so happened to create Rasputin, the most powerful AI war machine ever fielded by humanity, whose sister also just so happens to be a time-traveling robot. She is flawless in every way except her stubbornness, which can sometimes put her at odds with authority, but in the end, because she's smarter, prettier, more badass than everyone else, it all works out for the best. We also refer to this as a Mary Sue. We have Brother Vance, who is just the fanboy. We have Devram K, the chill old British sniper dude. We have Failsafe, the zany and split personality computer who's one realization away from either telling us or that she's sorry she can't allow us to do that, Dave. Then we have the Ghost, the very annoyingly chipper sidekick who's very reminiscent of Adam West's Batman and Robin's Robin. And last, but certainly not least, we have the player character, an Afghan Cap, an ageless, faceless, gender-neutral, culturally ambiguous adventure person. Now, I just went over the prominent NPCs for Destiny, the ones that you interact with on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. But there are storied villains within the universe of Destiny. Oryx, who's dead, Callus, who's been written off, the Prince of the Emos, who's going to die. We have Skolas, who's also dead, or other NPCs like Eris Morn, who's one of the most interesting characters in Destiny, but isn't in the game. The Queen of the Awoken, who's either dead or a potato. Then we have Petra Venj, who's been kind of pushed off to the side and not really fleshed out. Then we have Varix, who's off doing something. Yeah. It seems like everybody who's actually interesting in Destiny is either dead or pushed off to the side. For example, I feel like I know the depth of Ikora, Zavala, and Cayde's character development, but I don't feel the same about characters like Petra, who still has room to grow. Thinking about it, you can sort of characterize Destiny's characters into a couple of categories: currently dead or going to die, Mary Sue, ruined by the writing team, or a vending machine. And vending machines have a couple of subcategories. There's the vending machines that people like or are indifferent about, and the vending machines that people wish were dead. Destiny really doesn't have a BT-7274, or an Ezio, or a Joel and Ellie, or a Voss, or an Elizabeth and Booker, or a Kratos and Boy. There's no Trish, Yennefer, or Ciri. There's not a single character within the Destiny games that I would, if asked, what are some cool video game characters, would even put on the list, would even put 100th or 1000th on the list. And when I think about it, there's nothing that even compares with the writing of many minor characters or side characters in games like Final Fantasy or The Witcher, or any other games where the story and lore dictate the entirety of the universe, like it does in Destiny. Sure, most of the Destiny NPCs have unique designs, and one look at them will pretty much tell you everything you need to know about them, which is a credit to the art team, but past the surface, there's really not much going on. There's only really two ways of looking at what I'll call extras in any sort of storytelling medium. Either they're there to fill a very specific role, like being a vending machine in that oh-so-gamey kind of way, or they're a character. They have a past, they have wants, they have goals, they actively seek something. They have personality. This is Conrad Varner. He's one of the many minor characters that you'll meet in Mass Effect. This minor character has a 3-game story arc if the player character chooses to interact with him. The guy literally has a larger Wikipedia page than most of the main characters in Destiny. He's a character you meet less than a handful of times, for only a couple of moments, and games like Mass Effect and Dragon Age are full of characters like this that have tons of backstory, tons of character, tons of things to add if you seek it out. Destiny doesn't have any of that for any of its main characters. Now I know what you're thinking. But Joker, these are completely different games. Well, are they? Destiny is very much a story-based game. Everything, and I mean everything, has a story or lore justification. Even PvP weapon balance has a story justification. It's just not that great of a story being told, not in game at least. Part of this is because the characters are flat and boring, but another part of it is because the world feels fake. It feels like a game. There's not even the veneer of authenticity that would allow you to immerse yourself in the world of Destiny. Sure, there's pretty skyboxes and vistas, but for every building you can somewhat explore, there's 50 more that you can't. Destiny takes every chance that it has to remind you that you're playing a game. The world is one of the most important characters in any story, and yet the world of Destiny seems more like a Hollywood movie set than an actual character. In most lore-based games, like Destiny is supposed to be, you'd have a church, like the one that you see entering the EDZ, and it would have a story, it would have a history. In a fantasy game maybe, perhaps this would be a cathedral of the deep, where the deacons of the deep are led by Archdeacon Royce, one of Eldritch's most devoted followers. They do stuff and things like attend to a woman named Rosaria, whom he's deemed to be a goddess. But one day, he loses his faith, and shit goes down, and you see the aftermath throughout the church. And like in Dark Souls, where I stole that idea from, you see just that. But Destiny doesn't take place in a fantasy world, it takes place kinda sort of in reality, kind of sort of in our world only 700 years down the line. So maybe it could be like Fallout, where Fallout says that this Fallout's gonna take place in Boston, and you have landmarks that are in Boston, and if I looked at a map, well, damn it, wouldn't I know that that place in Boston actually exists? But maybe Bungie takes it a step further, and because this location is such an important centerpiece, it gets its own mythos. Maybe we can look at the history of the church IRL and the mythos that Bungie has tied to it and see what's what. Get this new appreciation for this location and this awesome set of world building that allows us to kind of like go, okay, this is what happens to this place in 700 years. That's kind of cool. But no. In Destiny 2, this church, that building, they're just more dilapidated buildings in Post-Apocalyptia. The only difference between this church and the dozen buildings down the road is I can actually go into it. When you have a lore-driven world like Destiny is supposed to be, it's just bad writing and terrible world building to have dilapidated building number 376. You can't just have a ruin. It has to be a castle, or a fortress, or something recognizable to most people. And that castle or fortress has to have a history. I mean, after all, what's the point of having a lore-driven world like Destiny's supposed to be if you skimp on the lore? Now, how do we fix this? What's the magic bullet for fixing the characters from NPCs to the world? Well, there's not one magic bullet. For some of this, it really does just appear to be nothing more than laziness and bad writing. Destiny is a very lore-focused world. And yet, Destiny 2 really didn't add anything to the concordat of lore that Destiny 1 had already established. Yes, there is some expansion to it, but nowhere near the expansion that The Taken King gave us, or Rise of Iron gave us, or even House of Wolves, or The Dark Below. And Destiny 2's had an entire year and 2 DLCs. So the first thing would be to, well, one, to light a fire under the ass of the writing team and get them to write more lore, but not just more lore. Work with the art team to tell stories in these spaces. Make everything count. Why is this location important and not some other? Why are there Fallen here, or Hive here, or Vex here, or Cabal here? What do they do when they're not just standing around waiting for us to come kill them? In the Dark Souls example from earlier, you can find golden stakes throughout the level. And according to the internet, these golden stakes signify the imprisoned deacons, and the fetters that enslave the shrouded denizens of the deep. Stakes bind the chained to earth, limiting the distance that they can stray from their tethered bonds. Storytelling isn't just about reading or hearing about King X's historical castle. It's about seeing that history. It's about fighting relevant foes to that history. It's about recovering relevant loot to that history. I mean, Destiny is the type of world where you could take a castle, any dilapidated castle that has existed throughout history, and say, once upon a time, during the Dark Age, a warlord set up shop here. Well, now there's questions. Now you have the beginnings of a story. What class was this warlord? Was he a titan? Was he a hunter or a warlock? Was it a woman or a man? Did they have a sigil, a banner, a theme? Some way that people knew that this was the warlord's territory if they stumbled upon it. Was this a good warlord or a bad warlord? Were they just and fair or a tyrannical despot? Did they lead a grueling campaign of military oppression against their people and then abduct the first daughter of every family to live in his pleasure garden as part of his harem? Or did he rally the people around him to fight off fallen invaders? What kind of weapons did they have? Did they have generals? If this warlord was a titan, for example, what were his companions, a hunter or a warlock? What were they like? Did this warlord join with the Iron Lords, or were they put down by them? In the hundreds of years since then, who's taken up residence in this castle? Why are they here? Why are we here? Why are we exploring it? Did the Fallen take over? It's likely the Fallen, but what house was it? Was it the House of Devils, or was it the House of Kings? Were they here during the Siva Crisis? Or is it inhabited by the Cabal? Deserters from the Red Legion taking up refuge in this castle to become warlords and rulers by their own hand. Is this a strike, or is it a raid? Is it just another location? Are there Taken here? Are there artifacts of power that the Taken seek? Maybe old light left over from when the Iron Lords clashed with the warlords, and their armies fought to the death, and that light left a scar, and the Taken are attracted to it. If that's the case, what relics are left over? Armor? Weapons? Do they tell a story? What story do they tell us about the people who once wielded them? Or the time in which these weapons were created? This isn't really that hard. The hardest part about writing something is taking the first step and then extrapolating, creating the world around it. And never underestimate the power of ambient storytelling. There's a lot of storytelling that can be done by just letting the player walk into a room and seeing something interesting. Never forget, in a fantasy world, the world is very much a character. Unfortunately, so far, all the characters in Destiny, including the world, are flat and cardboard. The other way this is fixed is by the writers at Bungie disregarding this atrociously stupid Hollywood writing trend where everything has to be connected to everything else. That's not how the world works. Sure, there's cause and effect. But for example, why does the Exo Stranger need to be Elsie Bray? There was nothing wrong with just leaving a character as their own character, this badass time-traveling robot. But now, there's no importance to her. She's just Anna Bray's sister. I have to imagine that someone thinks that this is clever. It's not. After finding out that Ikora only got her job as Warlock Vanguard because she'd been doing it, not because she was this badass Warlock, it made the character lesser. Oh, well, she's just Osiris's apprentice and she's already been doing the job, so might as well let her keep doing the job. There's no agency to that. There's no growth. There's no place where the character comes into their own. They just inherited something, they didn't work for it, and it makes any of the achievements that the character had before then or after then seem lesser. Other than that, it's all just too convenient. It's packaged in a way where the writers don't have to really do anything to explain anything. They just have to say, well, these characters had a pre-existing relationship. That's just so lazy and unimaginative, and worst of all, it's just boring. It doesn't ask the player to think about anything. It doesn't ask the writers to do anything. It just is because it is, and they already had a relationship, so that's all the explanation you need. Come the fuck on, that is so trite, it is pathetic. Bungie also needs to change how our character interacts with NPCs and other story elements. It's often thrown around the Destiny community that we want a dialogue wheel. Now, I understand where that might be cumbersome in, say, cinematics, where there's 3 in a party, going from story beat to story beat. Then again, most games have a quick timer that'll time out if you don't make a choice and make a choice for you, but I get why that might not be ideal for the handful of cinematics our characters are actually in. But like, when I go back to the tower, and I walk up to Shaxx, why can't I talk to him about the Crucible? And the Crucible's history, and his love for swords, and his history as a Guardian before becoming head of the Crucible. Hell, you could have a quasi-reputation system that the more I rank up with Shaxx or any of the other vendors, the more they like me and the more stories and personal stuff they're willing to share with me. And maybe this could tie into quests for exotics or gifts of some sort from the NPCs that are uniquely something that NPC would give the player. Kind of like how Cayde had an Ace of Spades made for us in Destiny 1. And yeah, we should be able to BS back and forth with them. We should have dialogue options that we can pick in response to the dialogue options that we just heard from them. This gives the characters more history, it gives them more personality, this gives them the potential to stand out more and do more or be more than just a token dumpster for loot I already have. On that same note, our character desperately needs a voice. I think Destiny 2 has ultimately proven that with the way that they've shifted our character to our ghost. The player character isn't the main character, the ghost is. Now, I often see the argument that people have that voicing our character could clash with people's headcanon. Or if they voiced a character, they might not respond the way that I would respond, or they might not sound the way I think they should sound. To anyone who thinks that, I have to point out that they've already done that. They've just supplanted our responses and our personality onto the ghost. And let's be entirely honest, this isn't Skyrim, this isn't Fallout. I can't just go into a random village, butcher everyone, and consume their bodies for nourishment. The Guardian then is a defined character, in the same way that Master Chief is a defined character, in the same way that Noble Six is a defined character. And as far as the story is concerned, everybody is the same Guardian. We're the one that defeated the Heart of the Black Garden, we defeated Crota, we defeated Skolas, we defeated Oryx, and so on and so forth with other raid bosses and other strike bosses. These characters have histories not entirely defined by us. Look at the beginning of Destiny 2.
Repeat, tower approach. This is City Hawk 723. Anyone home? No response on any channels, even the emergency frequencies. What is going on back there? Remember when I told you that you fly too fast? Forget I said that. Fly fast.
I have absolutely no clue what my character is doing between the end of Destiny 1 and the beginning of Destiny 2. I have no clue why they're not wearing the armor I left them in, or using the guns I gave to them. Where's my Helm of Inmost Light? I've been using the Helm of Inmost Light exclusively in one form or another since Destiny 1, Year 1, Week 2, when Xur sold it. Where's my Ias Luna? Where's my Thorn? Where's my Gallahorn? Where's my New Monarchy ship? Where's my Feud Unfading shader? It's not like I actively made the choice to take these things off, so clearly my Guardian does stuff without me doing stuff, and that's something more or less baked into the gameplay and narrative of Destiny 2 from the start. So why is Bungie okay with taking away player agency when it makes their life easier, but not okay with doing it when it could make the story better? And let's be honest, we get set on the plot railroad every time we play a campaign of Destiny. Osiris needs help, Osiris gets help. Anna Bray needs help, Anna Bray gets help. Cayde 6 dies, we need to seek vengeance. Guess what? We seek vengeance. The story of the game in any particular release decides what our character does. Like I said, this isn't Skyrim where I can butcher an entire village and devour the corpses with fava beans and nice china. There is a predetermined path that my character will follow that I have no control over. The Guardian is a character and should be treated like one, instead of just pulling a sleight of hand which superimposes that character onto our ghost. But I guess ultimately it is cheaper than paying 3 voice actors. You know, one for a male Guardian, one for a female Guardian, and one for the ghost, if they just superimpose everything on the ghost and just pay Nolan North. In short, the way to fix characters and characterizations in Destiny is 1, to flesh out the world more. Make everything matter and count. Don't squander an opportunity to tell a story. 2, write more lore. I don't know if Destiny has a story bible given some of the retcons and how stupid they are, but I'm guessing not. Destiny needs a story bible. 3, give NPCs more to do than just be glorified vending machines. Let the player interact with them. Let them have some sort of meaningful interaction. Let them do something. 4, give the player characters agency in the story. And we'll talk about that more when we dive into fixing the plot of Destiny and Destiny's storytelling and the way that the story is presented, but doing things as simple as giving the player a voice and not offloading that onto the ghost, making them the protagonist instead of us, goes a long way. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and like always, stay frosty. What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again, and today we're going to be talking plot. Now, Destiny does a fairly adequate job with plots. Well, plotting its plots to be plotted. And that's to be expected because, well, anyone can come up with a plot. Plot is a basic narrative framework. For example, Ghaul comes to Earth, imprisons the Traveler, takes our light, and it's our job to stop him. That's the plot of vanilla Destiny 2. Osiris has gone MIA in the Infinite Forest on Mercury. Ikora's Hidden have found his ghost. Now we need to track down Osiris, but wait! There's a big fuck-off Vex that we also need to kill. That's the plot of Curse of Osiris. Something something Warmind, something something Anna Bray, something something Hive God, suddenly we have to kill it, suddenly Rasputin is back again, once again, suddenly Warsats, suddenly save the day, and maybe Rasputin's on our side. And that's the basic plot of Warmind. Warmind was a mess. Most plots boil down to, you're the hero, they're the bad guy, go save the world. And while that's not terribly complex, it's not bad either, it's just stereotypical. The problem with the plots in Destiny isn't that they're not grandiose, it's that they're divorced from the player character. More often than not, and for lack of a better word, the player character in Destiny is treated less like a character and more like a one-stop shop Deus Ex Machina or maybe a MacGuffin. Outside of the raid, the player really doesn't figure anything out or plan anything. They're given a situation and told how best to get from point A to point B. Go here, kill that. While other characters experience narrative growth, what little they do experience at the moment before the game kind of forgets that it happened or doesn't explore it any further. For example, look at Ikora and the whiplash that she goes through from I don't want to die to fuck it, let's do this shit in literally 2.5 seconds. Or Zavala, from if we're gonna have another golden age, it'll be with Rasputin by our side to fuck this broken ass AI, fuck it hard, in 2.5 seconds. And the comic book really doesn't seem to help this, as it seems like Zavala has this antagonistic relationship with anything Braytek or Rasputin. There's also the fact that, for as powerful as our character is, for as much of a chosen one archetype that our character is, we never get the feeling that our character is leading anything. We're very much reactive, not proactive. We're the main mover and shaker in the storyline for Vanilla Destiny 2, for example, but Ghaul, the Council, the Speaker, Cayde, Ikora, Zavala, Hawthorne, they're the ones with the story arcs, not us. And add insult to injury, they're pretty bad character arcs, as we've already discussed. Our character's only measure of growth is a number. They don't narratively grow. We're basically still the exact same character we were when we were first risen, only we don't have a voice anymore. Basically what I'm saying is the player is very much a passenger for where the narrative is going, and not a driver. But how do we fix this? Well, if we go back to the character, if we write the player character as a character with agency, that will go a long way. What's my character's motivation? Am I looking for the six-fingered man? Am I trying to become the Dread Pirate Roberts? You know, what does my character want? What is my character doing? Why do they exist in this world? Just because we're Traveler spawn doesn't mean we have to be Traveler spawn. There was warlords, they were evil, they were bad guys. So why am I not an evil bad guy? Why have I not taken the path of Dredge and Yor even though I've had the thorn? Why is the player character the special chosen one? Why was I the one to receive light? Why was I the one to go save Osiris? Why was I the one to help Anna Bray bring back Rasputin, or help Rasputin, or kill Xol, or whatever the fuck was going on in Warmind? Why was it me? Why am I the one that Cayde trusts? Destiny says, well, the reason all of this is because you're the player character. That's not good writing. A good story would give the player a personal quest, a personal attachment to the story. Why am I playing this DLC? Other than the very obvious adventure hook of, well, I paid for it, might as well do it. What attachment do I have to what's going on narratively? In Halo, for example, regardless of whether or not I like 343's gameplay choices, or art, or whether or not I like the authors they have writing the books, I still keep buying Halo stuff because I'm attached to John and Cortana and the Arbiter, and I want to see how the universe unfolds. A lot of games try to create this attachment with good character writing. They draw you in with characters you can empathize with, characters that you want to help. Other games do this with mystery or a sense of exploration. Originally, I didn't think not knowing all the secrets of the Destiny universe was that bad. It was clearly a post-collapse civilization in the middle of a technological ignoragnum. So even if there was knowledge that I felt like the most basic of people would know, I was okay with it because I thought that mystery would be unveiled to us over the course of playing the game. It hasn't been. For example, in Destiny 2, it was supposed to tell us what it meant to be chosen by the light, what the light was. It was a story about the light and being a guardian. What does that mean?
Tell me again, Speaker, what makes your guardians worthy of the light? What is the price of such power and immortality?
Devotion, self-sacrifice, death.
Death. Explain.
Devotion inspires bravery. Bravery inspires sacrifice. Sacrifice leads to death. So, feel free to kill yourself.
But then we find out that that's just the Speaker's interpretation of what it should mean to be chosen by the light. I mean, we should have kind of already known this with Dredge and Yor and the Warlords, but point being, this is what the Speaker thinks it means to be chosen by the light, not actually what it means to be chosen by the light. And of course, we know the Speaker's a fucking liar.
Tell me, Speaker, what more does the Traveler want of me?
Ghaul, I speak for the Traveler. I never said it spoke to me.
So ultimately, we don't know. We never learned what it meant to be chosen by the light. We know what the Speaker's lies are or what his idealized version is, but he's also a religious zealot. One day away from running around the city in nothing but his mask screaming, "I am the consensus!" But ultimately, being chosen by the Traveler doesn't seem to mean anything other than you bought the game and your ghost found your light irradiated body before finding another light irradiated body. Now, of course, one could say that the purpose of Destiny is the one the player gives it. But then Destiny just becomes a bunch of compartmentalized systems that, frankly, other games like Warframe do much better for free. I think what I'm ultimately trying to explain is the relationship between the player and the plot, because the plot is nothing more than the framework of the story, and the story is how characters get from point A to point B, and the revelations and the growing and the experiences that the characters get along the way. Basically, the monomyth of the hero's journey. If we look at the framework of the hero's journey, because Destiny is trying to present a hero's journey, and superimpose that on Destiny, Destiny fails at most of its criteria. Destiny has the call to adventure, the road of trial, the gift from the goddess, and the return, but everything else is just gutted. Basically, Destiny removes all the parts where the character grows, or any of the characters grow. Our relation to the plot as the player is removed from any growth, and we don't struggle, we don't have to overcome some inherent character flaw. There's very little to learn, and again, it comes from the player being divorced from the plot. As in Destiny, the player is nothing more than a vehicle to experience brief moments in other people's stories. But even then, those stories aren't that great or well fleshed out or all that interesting. And then we go on to save the day. In fact, when I think about it, Destiny takes what Mass Effect and Dragon Age do with loyalty missions and makes entire DLCs out of them without the prerequisite time spent building up that loyalty. It's kind of like a philosophical difference between doing and experiencing. Currently, the story in Destiny is nothing more than doing. You do what you need to in the campaign to get from point A to point B, so you can go and grind out the mid game so you can go play the end game. All the story is a superficial flavoring for what the end game is supposed to be about. Except the end game has nothing to do with the story in Destiny, so I guess that doesn't work when I say it here. It did in Destiny 1, but not in Destiny 2. The story is not something experienced on an intellectual or emotional level. Not for the player, and not for the character. Unless the emotions Bungie is trying to invoke from the player are disappointment and anger. No, I'm still not over killing a Hive Prince and a Hive God over the course of 2 story missions, but moving forward. On top of that, realizing that the story, regardless of what player is at what point, is an overarching narrative with a point A, point B, and point C, and writing it as such, with the expectation that the player has done what's come before, is a reasonable place to start when telling a story in a sequel or a DLC. People often get hung up on the idea that Destiny is a shared world, as if we're not all just being written as the same character. So they justify the narrative shortcomings, saying, well, they can't do this because it's a shared world, or they can't do that because it's a shared world. That's preposterous. For example, just because somebody didn't play Halo 1 doesn't mean that Halo 1 never happened when they pick up Halo 2 or 3. And just because somebody didn't play Destiny 1 doesn't mean Destiny 1 didn't happen. The game still treats everyone as the same character, so the writing team needs to decide if they're going to commit or not. Because right now they're just dancing around, and the narrative suffers for it. If they commit to it, if they go, yeah, each and every player character is the same player character, like the Master Chief is the Master Chief, doesn't matter which Halo you're playing, if you're the Master Chief, then you're the Master Chief, then they can do a lot more with the narrative. And they basically do that. We're all the Guardian, and the world is still continued as if all the events happened. So it really doesn't matter if from a narrative standpoint somebody did the raid or not, because when they buy the next DLC, they're treated like they did the raid. They're treated like they beat the big bad of the last expansion. So why don't we have a proper narrative? It's not really like you can say, well, we have a reasonable expectation that players didn't do X, Y, and Z, if you're already treating players like they did X, Y, and Z. It just seems like this cop-out, this excuse to not go full in on writing a proper narrative. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. And like always, stay frosty. What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again. And today, people, we're going to talk about killing your darlings. Killing your darlings is a literary term coined by writer William Faulkner. This advice refers to the dangers of an author using personal favorite elements. Basically, it tells the writer, you gotta kill these to tell a good story, or it just becomes superfluous fanfiction. And the same could kind of be said for my thoughts on the writing of Destiny, right? If I let the lore get a free pass just because I liked it, even though it has problems, then I wouldn't be being honest. So, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, let's have at the lore. Now, I talked about lore at the beginning of the video because Destiny is a lore-rich world outside of the game. For as much as I enjoy the Grimoire, lore is more than just text on a page. It's the flavor of the world. Your Titan belongs to the Firebreak Order? Well, they should have armor that talks about the Firebreak Order and bears its sigils and other markings. You also need to have locations that are crafted to tell a story. And yes, you need to create more lore. Flesh out the world. Make it more than just a game. Make it a living, breathing entity. If you look at any fantasy world, you have things like religion. In fact, let's look at religion. In, say, something like Game of Thrones, for example, you have the old gods of the forest, the innumerable and nameless spirits of each tree, rock, stream that are worshipped by the children of the forest, and later the first men. You have the Faith of the Seven, introduced to Westeros during the Andal invasion 6,000 years prior to the beginning of the story, and the major religion of Westeros. Then you have the Drowned God, the local religion of the people of the Iron Islands. Across the world, you have the Lord of Light, the Bearded Priest of Norvos, the Black Goat, the Many-Faced God of Death, the Moonsinger, the Valyrian religion, the Giscari religion, the Great Stallion, the Great Shepherd, the Lion of Night, and the Maiden of Light. You have the Pale Child, the Weeping Woman, you have the Hooded Wayfarer, the Moonpale Maiden, and the Merlin King. In Destiny, we have the Hive religion. We know that the Fallen worship the Traveler as the Great Machine. We know that humanity and current human civilization is built around Traveler worship, as the governing body of the city is a theocracy under an absolute dictator, the Space Pope, who, yes, he has a council known as the Consensus, but the Speaker, the Space Pope, holds ultimate power over any choices made, so he could veto anything that the Consensus does. This also seems to be an unelected position passed down through apprentices, but even that's really just a guess based on pieces of information gathered here and there, and not outright stated anywhere in the lore. In other fictions, you have lines of kings and monarchs and rulers, and again, we know that this is a feature of the Destiny universe. We know that these things happened. We know that passing down the mantle of the Speaker is a thing, and that we know that there were other speakers, but who were they? What did they teach? How did they all keep it a secret for so long that the Traveler doesn't speak to them?
I speak for the Traveler. I never said it spoke to me.
Why don't we have some sort of list of kings or genealogies or appendices? You know, it's weird. And I mean, it's weird that we don't have that for humanity, because we have that for the Hive, essentially. We even kind of have that for the Fallen, but not for humanity, not for the Guardians. And while passing listeners may hear that and roll their eyes thinking, why does Destiny need this? To which I ask, why does it not? Not only why doesn't it not need it, or why doesn't it need it, whatever, you know what I mean. Why does it not have it? It's not like the writing team is busy programming or building the raids. It's not like this will take away time from doing those things. So why isn't the writing team working on this? What are they doing? It makes no sense. If one person can do this in the course of writing a book by themselves, then an entire writing team should be able to figure it out in no time. And again, this does feed into the world. The artists can go back and say, hey, what's this Order of the Rose you've written about? And they can create gear and weapons for that. They can go, well, what would that look like? Or designers can go, so this is how the Fallen worship the Traveler. Well, let's design a mission or a strike around that. Or the live team can go, okay, this is how the Consensus and the factions actually work. And here's this line of kings and rulers and speakers. Let's go ahead and integrate that into events somehow. And it's not like it's that hard to conceive different ways that this could be integrated into the game. For example, DMG04 announced on July 9th that after Destiny Update 1.2.3 ships, the Iron Banner event will use Iron Temple fire pits as capture zones instead of control flags. That is such a simple but dynamic change that adds to the world. It fleshes it out. It makes the Iron Banner feel more like an Iron Banner event. But if not for the lore, why does it matter if we're using flags or fire pits? Lore is the reason it matters. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and like always, stay frosty. What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again. So, this video clearly isn't as long as the others, or as long as I thought it would be, as this is just kind of my final thoughts on storytelling, the storytelling of Destiny, and storytelling in general, so I do apologize if this isn't quite what you were expecting. Again, I think in the context of a whole video, this section being shorter makes sense because, again, it is just my final words. But anyways, in closing, most fiction is a battle between good and evil, and that's a great canvas for fiction. However, it's often portrayed as your shining knight in a white cape on a white horse gallantly saving the day versus the evil monster or the uncivilized, unwashed barbarian. Yet, when we look at the lore, what are the most popular stories? The Book of Sorrows, The Shadows of Yore, the story of Dredge and Yore, and the Fall of Rezilazir. And that's because the real battle between good and evil isn't fought in an epic 1,000,000,000-man battle. It's fought in the heart, by morally gray characters. The battle is almost an afterthought, or the actualization of the character's choices made up until that point. And that's why these stories, I think, resonate with people, because the strongest stories are those of the human heart in conflict with itself. If everybody thinks your character is wholly good or wholly evil, then what you're writing is cardboard. Destiny 2 took an odd shift from Destiny 1. Destiny 1 often focused on astromythology and these huge concepts. Destiny 2 became reductive. It removed the darknet, and it tried to focus on interpersonal character-driven stories. Ikora's story, Zavala's story, Hawthorne's story, Cade's story, Anna's story, Osiris's relationship with Ikora. That, in and of itself, isn't bad. Like I said, some of the best and most interesting stories are that of the human heart in conflict with itself. But one, in most games, these would be side quests, not the entirety of the story. And two, we don't really see the human heart in conflict with itself, not in game, and we sure as hell don't experience it. We don't go on a journey as the player or as a character in the game. We're not forced to make interesting or complex choices. Humans are not just the hero or the monster. Humans are both. Humans have the capacity for unfathomable kindness and unimaginable cruelty. Even in Destiny, we see heroes fall to darkness and temptation. With the story of Dredge and Yore, we see this unimaginable Lovecraftian horror. Oryx, the butcher of countless civilizations, become sympathetic. That's why people are drawn to these stories, and that's why I think people are drawn to this world, because it does have potential, it really does, but it's being squandered. And for that, Destiny has become smaller and lesser, and will continue to do so unless something changes. But hey, these are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and like always, stay frosty.